What's up? What's up? What's up, good people? My name is Terrell Bilal. This is a novelty podcast special. No, it's not a podcast. Again, do not turn it off. You can click the link in the description below, and you can check out my podcast where I'm talking about movies, TV shows sometimes, and it's just cool. It's different. I promise. It's different. More different than anything you heard out there. And the thing that happens to me during my podcast is I get framed as a negative Nancy. I am, but it's by default. I have a theory that most movies are bad, and that's okay. That means that the good ones should be more appreciated, right? Something has to be the cream of the crop, and something has to be a bottom of the barrel. It's just the way it works. It's science. With that being said, I want to slip right into my comfort zone and get into the top 10 worst movies of the year. There should be a top 20 worst movies of the year, but there isn't for some reason. There isn't. So I'm going to work with 10 just because it's a better number and just because of tradition. You know how you give up morals for tradition. Let's get into it. Number 10 on the worst movies of the year is Jexi, starring Adam Levine. So this is the thing. This could easily be number 1. This could easily be the worst movie of the year because it's just that bad. But at the end of the day, there was no expectations, no demand for this movie. They spent nothing on this movie. It was just kind of a crapshoot. The studio made about $3 million back, little less than $3 million, and that's internationally. So not only did all of you and me figure out that this is probably not worth our money, trust me, it wasn't, and I'm telling you now so you can know it wasn't. This movie sucked. It sucked when it came down to story, and it sucked when it came down to character development, and it sucked when it came down to intent. So with this movie, they were really trying. They were really trying to do something. They were really trying to tell you a story. They were really trying to help you understand some of the shortcomings of society. They chose a character who was addicted to his phone to try to really bring that to life for you as a concept so they can kind of deconstruct it and change it for you. But they constantly forgot what they were trying to do, and it just spent more time being demeaning than it was fulfilling its purpose. On top of that, a lot of the funny was not funny. Just a lot of timing was off. Michael Pena was trying to be that guy that redeemed this movie, but he couldn't because he's not that type of funny. It was a miscast. Maybe a different comedian could have pulled this out better, but honestly, I don't think anything could have saved this movie. And the top 10 was being 10 on the top 10 is sort of a mercy kill. Trust me. Number 9 on the top worst movies is Brightburn. So I was seeing critics who like this movie, and I don't know what they were thinking because they are trained to see that this story is not a real story. So this kid, spoiler alert, this kid crash lands on Earth and he's evil from the get-go. And what happens at the end of the movie? He does the most evil thing you can think of. It's like, what was that for? We completely forgot the use of movies. I thought that the lead was cool. Jackson A. Dunn. I thought that he was cool. And I think that it was a lot worse ways they could have went, but they decided to go with one that works. Yeah, but besides that, it was really forgettable. I even like Elizabeth Banks' performance in here. A lot of the performances was good, but they could not save this movie that truly had no purpose. It's basically a spoof of the evil Superman, and they want to even expand on the folklore. But the movie lost money, not received well with the critics, so hopefully we don't see another one of these atrocities. It was horrible. If you just want to be bored to death and see a cool scene here or there, then you can rent this thing on Redbox, but I know you didn't because you probably know it's terrible. Number 9 is Glass. I was really very numb to Glass. I didn't really have expectations about Glass because I had very mixed reviews about Split. So a lot of people like Split, and the casual fan is often tricked by, an amazing performance. James McAvoy is giving you an amazing performance, but it is a performance that is completely misused, if you ask me. So with that being said, that's probably why I didn't get any Oscar love and all of that, or people was like, oh, this is the best acting I've seen since such and such. No, the Unbreakable mythology was, kind of prematurely expanded on. It should have been left where it was. It didn't need more. So now you got Glass doing more of the wrong. And it was a lot worse than Split because it tried to do even more. It tried to give it a bigger purpose and tried to give you not only a bad guy, but an evil organization. You have to be careful with evil organizations. They muck up story, and that's what they did for this one. See Resident Evil. Most of the time, evil corporations, they do not work. But that didn't stop anybody. With that being said, it was just a mess. I thought that, Samuel Jackson was cool, but I think that he probably couldn't believe how bad his character was written. And James McAvoy was doing his great performances again, but he probably couldn't believe how bad that script was, and nothing could survive it. Glass is definitely one of the worst movies of the year. I don't even know how I got through it, honestly. Number 7 is Hustlers, and oh my God, I hated Hustlers. I hated Hustlers after 20 minutes of that movie. Now, I loved the first 20 minutes, and I'm pretty sure that first 20 minutes got J-Lo an Oscar nomination on its own, because, oh my God, have you ever seen Jennifer Lopez pole dance? You should see it. You'd want to give her an Oscar right then. You don't need to see the rest of the movie. I didn't like her character that much. I don't think they did a lot of favors for her character, but funny enough, if they actually told the movie from her perspective, it would have made a lot more sense versus the perspective that they chose. But with that being said, I didn't like a lot about this movie narrative-wise. I don't like what they had to do to men to make this movie work for the message that they were going for. What they did to men was awful. And it's like, that's just not how it really works. Nobody just doesn't get along with any members of the opposite sex because the opposite sex is the worst. Life is a lot more nuanced, and I feel like they should have been more honest with the story they were trying to tell. It would have did a lot for their characters, if you ask me. So I think that they just missed really trying to build good character in this movie, and it cost them in more ways than one. And it's sitting at number 7 on this list. And I wish I could do it lower, but it's some really bad sci-fi movies this year. Number 6 is Gemini Man, directed by Ang Lee. And I say directed by Ang Lee because for some reason I keep having high hopes for Ang Lee because I know what he's capable of. But he definitely missed on this one. And this is like a passion project of Hollywood. No matter what, they couldn't get the script off the ground, and they defied all odds and they got the script off the ground. Well, guess what? The script is now getting stumped to the ground. So this movie did not make the money that it was supposed to. Disappointed box office wise. Will Smith is having a rough year. Even Spies in Disguise is underperforming, and we may be Will Smithed out. We'll see if Martin Lawrence is the magic elixir for that, but Martin Lawrence is tired of doing Bad Boys movies. He's probably tired of fame altogether, honestly. And I think that may be the elixir for Will Smith, but I think that people are really starting to catch on to Will Smith and all of his mediocrity because it's kind of crazy. So the biggest problem with this movie is that it does not it just shouldn't have been made, okay? It just shouldn't have been made because it didn't make sense. None of it made sense. Every step of the way in this story, it got less and less logical. It was bad. And this is the thing. You know that it's a sci-fi movie. You know that super clones don't exist. So you're already suspension disbelief. And even with that benefit of the doubt, they could not make it work. I did not like this movie. I kind of like Clive Owen, but I always like Clive Owen when he just comes and he's just grunting and, having the snarky face on. I like that. But, I didn't like anything else. I like clone Will Smith, too. He was all right. But, Jesus, this movie just was all over the place, not knowing what the hell it wanted to be, and nothing ever made sense. Nothing just added up. You know what I mean? Number 5, not 6, I almost said 6. Number 5 is Men in Black International. So this was another one. A lot like Gemini Man. It just didn't know what it was from scene to scene. It did not know its purpose. So the first couple Men in Blacks, the reason why they never lost their fervor is because they knew what they were. They were stories about immigration. So, if you really just take it and you write a script with that in the back of your mind, Jesus. Yes?
LC.
Yeah.
I just wanted to tell you, guess at the casino.
Who?
Jarvis Landry.
They tried to make it a completely different thing and it just did not work. So you got good chemistry between Tessa Thompson and Chris Hemsworth. That's something that's working. And of course, Liam Neeson, for the purpose he was serving, he was good. But that's it. I just like those two performances. That's really all I like. I didn't like a lot about this movie because the story, it just kind of didn't work. Honestly, it was too much going on. It was a lot. It was just too much noise. And by the time it was over, you didn't care. And you was probably relieved, honestly. Number 4 is X-Men Dark Phoenix. This is another one that could have easily been number 1. When I was making this list, it was at number 1 for the longest. I had to talk myself out of it. I hated this movie every step of the way. You know it's bad when you have that next level action that X-Men movies are, and you just don't care. You just don't care because the movie's stakes that they try to make doesn't make any sense to you. You don't even care. The story is just too silly. I liked it a lot better when Magneto was making these stories go. It made a lot more sense. His philosophy made a lot more sense. Dark Phoenix's didn't, and everything was just bland. I mean, when there was no action going on, you just did not care. So when that happens, it's really hard to forgive a movie. There was some decent performances in here, I guess, but even McAvoy struggled. Michael Fassbender was great, but he couldn't save this thing. It was just too much of a mess, just too meaningless, and it just didn't work overall. Number 3 is Hellboy, directed by Neil Marshall. I wish Guillermo del Toro was on this. I don't think he would have ever let this travesty happen. It was bad. So this one was just ridiculous. I just did not like this story. I think that anytime you start your story in the BC time or whatever, it wasn't BC. But it might as well have been. If your story starts hundreds of years ago, I'm probably going to have trouble relating to it. And I think that was a big part of it. Now, honestly, I don't think that David Harbour was the worst thing about this story. Honestly, I actually liked him as Hellboy. But so much other things about it just didn't make sense. They were missing a lot of character development. They chose the wrong scenes to put into the final cut. I actually liked a lot of the action scenes. I don't think that's where this thing lost as an action movie. I think that the story just wasn't in place good enough. Even my boy, Ian McShane, he couldn't save this thing. And I don't like what they were doing with his character either. And his character was really important for Hellboy to help him with the final part of his arc and turning down, this all-powerful prophecy that he was supposed to be a part of. But the way they did it, it was just terrible. A lot of these scenes were just annoying. And when a movie is this cool, when it's this many concepts, it's really disappointing when it starts to annoy you. But damn it, I was annoyed. Number 2 is Cats, directed by Tom Hooper. And it's just so funny because Hollywood has this thing to where as if, hey, this has brand recognition, so it's going to succeed. And then they test it and people are like, I don't want any parts of that. And they're like, just make the movie, they'll see. And then they make the movie. So Cats trailer dropped and the whole world is laughing at the Cats trailer. So what do? They go ahead and they steal... drop the movie. It's funny. Don't they got like test audiences and shit? Like, how did this even happen? But I guess that wasn't enough to help. And Cats came out, lost $60 million almost immediately. It could make some of that up, but it lost a shit ton of money. It's getting laughed at by critics and audiences alike. The thing about it is they were probably banking on these musical numbers coming through because the thing doesn't have any story. There's no story here. So they're like, well, we're not here from the story. We're here to sing and dance. But this is the thing. They're singing and dancing about fucking cats who want to die and be reincarnated. I can't relate to that shit. Oh. And number 1 on the worst movie of 2019 is Six Underground. So we've been seeing this with Michael Bay, right? Michael Bay has been Zack Snyder have always been flash over substance. They want to flash some skin in front of you, some explosions in front of you, some cars in front of you. They're just going to keep flashing things. You want to know what he wanted to flash this time? Architecture. That's right. architecture was the big thing that he wanted to do. He was like, oh, what an amazing building, right? He was watching on YouTube and shit. And he's like, what if someone parkoured against the building? And then there was another one. It's like, oh, what an amazing building. What if people were murdered by being thrown off of this building? Let's make this happen. And they were like, but Michael Bay, we need a story. He was like, oh, some people want to stop dictators. Let's do that. I don't know if Michael Bay has this accent. And when I look at him, it's just the kind of guy he seems to me. But I did not like this movie, mostly because I was confused most of the time. Most of the time, they didn't give a shit about telling me a story. Most of the time, it was like, oh, you're confused, but look at this. Look at this sick drift, though. Oh, yeah. Oh, you're confused? Well, watch these people fall off buildings, though. And it's like, bro, yes, that's cool, but I'm annoyed. That's one thing you don't want to do to your audience. You don't want to annoy and confuse them. Now, I've heard great review. I heard some people like this movie, right? I think it's the worst movie of the year, and I heard people like it. And you want to know why? Because I challenge those people, and I say, why do you like it? You know what they say? They say, well, it had a lot of action. Well, yeah, but it's a movie. So you got action, movie. You can't forget the movie part. If you want to just see action, you can go to YouTube. You don't need to give me a narrative with it. But if you're going to take an hour and a half, 2 hours of my time, I'm going to need a narrative. I'm going to need something I can take. I'm going to need some substance. And Michael Bay said, fuck you. Netflix is free. Take The Flash. And I'm just like, okay, but you're going to pay. So now he's paying. And the 5 people who watch this is going to know that his movie, according to me, is the worst movie of the year. And I love Ryan Reynolds. He couldn't save it. And Ryan Reynolds is a lot better than this. He's done better projects than this year, and he will have better projects next year. It's just something about Michael Bay that makes people want to work with him. But I did not feel this movie. They developed the wrong people too. They should have just went belly up on Ryan Reynolds, but they didn't. Ryan Reynolds was like a side character, and that was a big mistake. He's the best part of your movie because we already like him. Got built-in charisma there. Feed off of that. But instead, he was like, but what if they parkoured against that building? It's like, give me a story, man. But anyway, before it came out, they said it was the most Michael Bay film ever. So, there you go. Standards.